the Sunshine State's shadow, DeSantis's child labor bill, and the immigration conundrum. Florida, under Governor Ron DeSantis's staunch anti-immigration policies, finds itself grappling with a critical labor shortage. The state's aggressive crackdown on undocumented immigrants, a cornerstone of DeSantis's platform, has created a significant void in essential sectors, particularly agriculture and tourism, industries traditionally reliant on a substantial immigrant workforce. The proposed solution, shocking in its implications, is to fill this gap with Florida's schoolchildren. A bill currently making its way through the Republican-controlled state legislature seeks to drastically weaken child labor protections, potentially exposing children as young as 14 to exploitative working conditions. This legislation aims to allow minors to work unlimited hours, including overnight shifts and on school nights, without mandated breaks. For 16 and 17-year-olds, the bill permits work exceeding 6 consecutive days. These provisions effectively erase existing safeguards designed to protect vulnerable youth from the dangers of overwork and inadequate rest. DeSantis, in his characteristically unapologetic manner, has defended the bill, invoking a nostalgic past where he claims part-time work for teenagers was commonplace. However, this romanticized vision starkly contrasts with the reality of the proposed legislation, which goes far beyond part-time employment, creating a system ripe for exploitation. The bill's language reveals a clear intent to allow employers to utilize child labor without restraint, a stark departure from established labor standards and child welfare protections. The governor's justification is inextricably linked to his administration's aggressive immigration enforcement. During a recent forum with Donald Trump's former border czar, Tom Homan, DeSantis openly acknowledged the connection, suggesting that Florida's children should step into the shoes of the deported immigrant workers who previously provided dirt-cheap labor. This candid admission underscores the deeply troubling implications of the bill, a direct attempt to replace a vulnerable immigrant workforce with equally vulnerable children. The bill's proponents dismiss concerns by drawing a false equivalency between the proposed legislation and historical labor abuses. DeSantis, in a dismissive remark, referenced Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, a seminal work exposing the horrific conditions faced by immigrant child laborers in the early 20th century. He implied that the current bill doesn't represent a similar level of exploitation, a claim that ignores the potential for severe consequences for Florida's children. The sheer scale of the potential impact is staggering. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, over 27% of Florida's workforce is foreign-born. The Farmworker Association of Florida estimates that approximately 60% of its membership, predominantly undocumented immigrants, is highly susceptible to detention and deportation under DeSantis's policies. This vulnerable population, already facing precarious working conditions, is being effectively replaced by a generation of children potentially subjected to similar, if not worse, circumstances. The situation is further complicated by the Trump administration's rescission of temporary protected status for hundreds of thousands of Haitians, many of whom reside in Florida. This action has created a further depletion of the workforce, exacerbating the need for desperate measures, as evidenced by the proposed child labor bill. Opposition to this legislation is mounting. Groups such as the Florida Policy Institute, FPI, have voiced strong concerns, highlighting the risks to children's health, safety, and education. They point to a 2024 report from Governing for Impact and the Economic Policy Institute, which documented a significant rise in workplace injuries and violations involving minors in Florida, particularly within the agricultural sector. This report also noted a broader trend across numerous Republican-controlled states to weaken child labor laws, a disturbing national pattern that the proposed Florida bill would only amplify. Previous versions of similar child labor bills were met with resistance, leading to the removal of some of the harsher provisions. However, the current bill brings back many of those problematic elements, causing renewed alarm among child welfare advocates and labor rights organizations. Despite some Republican senators expressing reservations, the bill has advanced, raising serious concerns about its ultimate passage. The interconnectedness of the child labor bill and DeSantis's immigration policies is undeniably clear. The proposed legislation serves not as a solution to the labor shortage, but as a consequence of the governor's restrictive immigration agenda. By creating a labor vacuum through aggressive deportation efforts, DeSantis is creating an environment where the exploitation of children becomes a seemingly viable option. The bill's passage would represent a significant setback for child welfare and labor rights, setting a dangerous precedent for other states. The potential consequences, increased workplace injuries, compromised education, and long-term developmental harm, are immense and far-reaching. The juxtaposition of Florida's sunny image with the dark reality of this proposed legislation presents a stark contrast, exposing the underbelly of DeSantis's seemingly unwavering commitment to strict immigration enforcement. The question remains, at what cost will this unwavering commitment come? The answer, if the bill passes, will be borne by Florida's children. The future of child labor laws in the U.S. hangs precariously in the balance, and Florida, under DeSantis's leadership, is at the forefront of this troubling development. This is not just a Florida issue. It's a national warning sign, a glimpse into a future where the desperation created by restrictive immigration policies leads to the systematic exploitation of children. The fight against this bill is far from over, and the stakes could not be higher.